What a great way to start. Okay, so let me tell you a story to sort of kick off this morning's lesson, those of you who saw it on Facebook. A number of years ago in the Six-Day War, there was a man who ultimately came to study in the center. He was in the middle of the Six-Day War in the Middle East, and, you know, as they say, war is hell. And this gentleman had a good buddy who was with him, and a bomb hit and blew his buddy to pieces. So at that moment, he looked up into the heavens, and you can imagine the anger that he had. You can imagine the power and the emotion behind that. But he looked up into the heavens, and he simply said, not simply, he powerfully said, if that's what life is about, he didn't want to see it anymore. And about 6 months later, he started to go blind. And for the probably 25 years that I knew him, he was still blind. But he didn't let it stop him. But he went blind because of his anger. We've all heard stories about people who get angry, they pull off the side of the road, they get in a fight, they don't come home, or they're on the other side of it. We know anger, Kabbalistically, is one of the most powerful, destructive emotions there are. And that's why I wanted to speak this morning about it. Because there's not one of us probably that don't have anger in some way, shape, or form. It may not be that blind rage, but it's still destructive to us. And the power, and this was this gentleman, the one who was in the war, you know, the energy, scientists tell us, energy is everything, can only be transformed, can't be destroyed. So if you imagine the power behind his anger at that moment, was huge. And in the 25 years that I knew him, learning Kabbalah, etc., it was difficult for him to build up that same amount of energy in the positive frame, to take away the blindness. What he did, though, as I just quickly mentioned, he didn't let it stop him. In fact, my teacher, Rav Berg, used to say sometimes he sees more than we do. Because you can take a blind person into a dark room that we can't see. And we might bump into something, but they won't. So it's sometimes a question of, you know, who sees and who doesn't. But our purpose this morning is really about the anger, because we want to learn what anger is, what it does to us, and how we can convert it. Because that's all of Kabbalah. It's not here just to say, well, anger is really terrible. And you're going to hear some pretty powerful things this morning, because we're going to go a little deeper into Kabbalistic teachings. But I want you to be open-minded, meanwhile, to hear it, to think about it, to understand it, and then we're going to finish off with how we can change it. Because there's nothing that you and I, with the help of the power of our soul and the light of the Creator in us, cannot change. It's just the consciousness. And as we've said, consciousness is everything. So the more we come to understand what anger is, how it behaves, where it comes from, then more we're able to take control over it, and not just control, but actually dispel it, get it out of our lives. So the first thing I want to share with you, the Zohar, which is the main writings of Kabbalah, says few things about anger, but one of them is a little shocking, because we usually don't think in these terms in the 21st century. But it says anger is idol worship. Anger is idol worship. So if we stop for a second and think, well, what does idol worship mean? So we all think right away, we think back to biblical times when people worshipped whatever is the sun and the moon, the stars, statues, and things like that. And we say, oh, we would never do such a thing like that. But now I've just presented with you a new way of understanding. Is there anyone in this room who never got even a little bit angry? Great. So then in some way, shape, or form, we have all worshipped idols. But what does that mean? What does it mean when they say idol worship? If you think about it, we are here as pure and perfect beings of the light. We are here as creatures in the image and likeness of God. So then our true nature is to be connected to the light of God. If you want to say worship it, which means we believe the light of God that is in our soul, but is also infinitely all around us, is much bigger than we are. It's metaphorically, let's say, above us. So you worship something that's above you. So if we know the light of the Creator is more powerful than we are, even though we're in that image and we have that energy, then we worship the Creator. We worship God. So idol worship means anything that we believe, even if it's just in the moment, is our source of fulfillment. Because you and I learn here in the center, the light of God is our source of fulfillment. Not the car, the house, or whatever in the physical world. They can be the manifestations through which the light of God comes. But it's the light of God that is our true fulfillment, is our true source. So therefore, any time that we're caught up in the physical, material world as the source of our happiness and joy, at that moment we are caught up in idol worship. Because what have we done? We've just replaced the light of the Creator with something else. And it's very subtle. And don't think of it as like bad or evil. It's for us to be aware. Consciousness is everything. So as we come to realize that the moment that we're caught up in, if I just got that promotion, if I get this promotion now, or I get this raise, or I meet that person, or I get to do this thing, or I go on that vacation, I'm going to be so happy. It's going to be the source of my fulfillment at that moment. We're idol worshiping those things. Not that we can't change it. Because again, nobody in Kabbalah says we shouldn't have nice material things. The difference is the consciousness of thinking they are the source of our fulfillment versus the light of God through those things. As we will draw them and share that light, that's our source of fulfillment. And that's why whether we have material things or not, we can still be fulfilled. If we connect to the light of God in our soul and all around us, and we're shining it and sharing that all the time, we can be happy. I mean, how many times have we seen somewhere in the world, you watch some of the news programs or whatever, and you see people in the most impoverished, difficult situations who are running around with smiles on their face, happy and joyous, singing and dancing. And then you can go to some of the wealthiest, most affluent areas, and you see people walking around like they're in depression and misery. So is it the material, physical things, or is it the consciousness of the light? Consciousness of the light. So that's one thing to start realizing. And we're building this up, you'll see towards the end where the transformation comes in. The second part, which you could now imagine is connected with it, the second aspect of anger, according to the Zohar, is it disconnects a person from their soul's light. Simple, right? When you're vacuuming, I don't know how many of you vacuum, but you remember what vacuuming was. So you plug the vacuum in and you're vacuuming, and you're pulling the vacuum along, and all of a sudden what happens? You pull too far and it pulls the plug out of the electricity, and what happens to the vacuum? It stops. Why? Doesn't the vacuum function? It's functioning, the motor works, all the electricity or the electronics, etc. It's disconnected from its power source. So when a person falls into anger, they are disconnecting from their power source of the light of the Creator. That's the key. That's what it means when it says, basically, we lose our soul. A person loses their soul in their anger. That's why they'll call it blind rage if it reaches such an intense level. What does blind rage mean? They can't see, they can't think. Everything goes out of their mind. Why? Because they've just disconnected from their soul's light. So we want to be very conscious and cautious from this point forward about falling into any aspect of that rage or that anger. Because those reasons, we don't want to be idol worshipers. We want to remember always that the light of the Creator is our infinite source of joy, happiness, peace, prosperity, all the good things in life. And we want to stay connected to the light of our soul. I mean, imagine, how many of you ever had the case where you're typing something on the computer, right? You're making an essay or writing an email or whatever, and you forget to save it, and then suddenly the computer goes out. Ever happened to you? Tell me that's not frustrating. Because why? You got to turn the computer back on. You lost everything you wrote for the last half hour, and now you got to try and rewrite it. A shame, isn't it? Instead of having saved it and then move forward. So in a simple way, that's what the Kabbalists are saying in 21st century terms. When a person gets angry and they lose that connection to the light of their soul, they lose their soul, it's as if they erased many of the good things they did. Because remember, it's all energy. And they short-circuit that energy away. So we want to start awakening why we don't want to fall into that anger, what we can start to do about it. A couple quick examples from the Bible. Some of you may have heard of them or not. But there was a gentleman named Korah. Now you go back to the story of Exodus. Moses took 40 years to lead the Israelites, us, through the desert. Took us out of the slavery and bondage of Egypt. Took us through the desert with the miracles of manna, splitting the Red Sea, all kinds of amazing things. One man, after a number of years, very powerful and wealthy man, starts looking at Moses, says, you know, Moses, I'm not sure I like this arrangement you've made. You're the leader. You're telling us what to do and all this stuff. He says, but I'm also a leader, which he was. He says, and then you hire or you appoint your brother as the spiritual leader, Aaron. He says, but I'm also as good as Aaron. He says, and then your sister is now the prophetess. So this sure looks to me like nepotism. Why are you doing this to me? And out of his anger, what did he do? He challenged Moses. Actually, it's funny, I didn't think of it this way till today. He challenged him to a spiritual duel. You know, like you see in the 1800s, they duel, they take their paces and they turn around with the pistols. So basically he did. So Moses said, okay. Moses being humble, he says, you want to challenge? Let's challenge. If you're right, great. Then I made a mistake. But if you're wrong, you're wrong. So they made their individual sacrifices, and they said, whichever one is accepted, that's the guy who wins. So Korah, because he was so angry at Moses, having done all these things, so he made his sacrifice, and guess what happened? The biggest earthquake in history opened up, swallowed Korah and 250 of his followers. Now, it's not just an earthquake like we think. It literally is written Kabbalistically, not because God was angry, although we'll get to that a little later, but remember, everything's cause and effect. So if this man, out of his own anger, blind rage, blind to the good that was done to him by Moses, the good that he had in his life, all the good that he had, he was wealthy, he was powerful, he was also one of the leaders. Not on the same level, let's say, as a Moses or Aaron or Miriam, but he was also a spiritual leader over hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people. But it wasn't enough for him. So in his challenge, and the 250 people that joined him, they literally says the earth opened up, swallowed them, all their belongings, every paper, anything that had any connection to them was swallowed up in that earthquake, and then it sealed up and closed up, and that was it. They were gone. Okay, just looking at the faces. Then we have one that's coming up actually this week. Some of you have been with us. We're talking about this cosmic event called Poram, which is basically the story out of the book of Esther. So there was another man. He was also very wealthy, powerful, virtually second to the king of Persia. Had everybody in all 127 nations bowing down to him wherever he walked. One man named Mordecai refused to bow down. All he would do, this Haman guy, he would go home and complain to his wife. Mordecai won't bow down. How dare he not bow down? Doesn't he know who I am? Anger, anger, anger. And in the end of the story of the book of Esther, what happened to Haman? Out of his own anger, it was all turned around and he died, and his followers also. So we want to really grasp what can happen if we let our anger run away from us and we stop connecting to the light of our soul and just simple appreciation and gratitude for the blessings that are in our life. In fact, it's interesting, this last week I think I shared with 3 different students to create a gratitude journal. Just keep a little notebook, because they were having difficulty with certain things in their life. Just keep a little notebook, anything that's good in your life. So they're driving down the street. How many of you drove here without an accident? What about the rest of you? Oh, those are the shy people. Okay, they don't want to raise their hand. I get it, right? So hopefully we all got here without an accident. But now let me ask you, when you walked in the door this morning, did you say to yourself, thank you, God, or thank you, light, or I appreciate the fact that I got here without an accident? No, we don't. We take it for granted. So I've told these students, even that, you go to work in the morning, just write down, you have work to go to. Whether you like it or not, at least it's a job, pays some bills. Write down appreciation, gratitude that you were able to drive without an accident, without a ticket, that you have a car. Even you may want to replace the car, but meanwhile you have a car. You follow anything and everything that will awaken a sense of gratitude and appreciation will help us start to take away the energy of anger. Okay. Anger, third aspect. Anger is an aspect of ego. Okay, some heads going like this, other going, what? I mean, ego is usually, look at me, I'm great, I'm wonderful, etc. No, anger, or ego rather, Kabbalistically, simply means disconnect from the light of the Creator. As they say, edging God out. Ego. So then if anger is a disconnect from the light of our soul, which is the light of the Creator, then it's edging God out. It's pushing away the light. It's a form of ego. Maybe not idol worship. The couch, the car, the job, other people are my source of fulfillment. What's ego? I am the source of my fulfillment. I am the great one, right? I have the power. So then anger is just a disconnect from that, right? Why didn't it go my way? Why didn't I get what I want? If I'm all powerful and I'm almighty, why didn't I get what I want? And here's the best part. How many of you ever been angry at an inanimate object? Raise your hand, all of us. Come on. We've all done that. You kick the table, you bump into something, you stub your toe on the carpet. Who are you angry at? Darn carpet. How did that chair jump out in front of me? I mean, really? Really? You follow? That's the ego part. That's the ego, because the chair shouldn't have jumped out in front of me. Do you know who I am? I don't care if you have American Express. It doesn't matter. Some of you remember those commercials. But that's a sign for us. If you can be angry at an inanimate object, I mean, people we can always rationalize. Well, you don't know what they did to me, how they treated me, or what have you. But really, to the chair, to the carpet, to the bed post or something, the leg of the bed, how can we be angry? It's our ego. Our ego. Shouldn't happen to me. Shouldn't happen to me. So then they tell us, when a person has a difficulty with it, with anger, and they get caught too many times. And this is, for me, frankly and honestly, it's a pet peeve. They have this thing that they tell people they should go to anger management. Take anger management courses, learn to manage your anger, read books on anger management. To me, it is one of the most destructive aspects to keep anger going. Think about it. If anyone here is a manager of people in one way or another, whether that means a parent, an employer, a supervisor, any of you? So what do you do when you manage people? Do you get rid of them? No, you move them around and you manage what they do, when they do, how they do, etc. Yes? You following? So then what's anger management? It's not getting rid of the anger, which is idol worship, disconnect from the light of the soul, ego, right? Losing all one's blessings. It's just managing it. Make sure it's okay here. Don't let it express here. It's okay here if you're in sports. Scream and yell. You follow, like, manage it. Let it out. Don't let it out, etc. Why? The light of God is not angry. The light of God has nothing to do with anger. The light of God is kindness, compassion, love, generosity, etc. Tolerance. So then that's what we're supposed to really be. Don't manage your anger. We're learning this morning, and we learn in the center how to transform it. How to get rid of it altogether, because that's not our original nature. We say many times we are created in the image and likeness of God, and therefore we constantly also affirm, I am a pure and perfect being of light. And if I'm a pure and perfect being of light, then I have no anger. So could we say that together? Please. I am a pure and perfect being of light. Turn to your neighbor. You are a pure and perfect being of light. We've got to turn the other way. You are a pure and perfect being of light. Turn behind you. Speak to the back of their head. It's okay. You are a pure and perfect being of light. You are a pure and perfect being of light. Okay. Now, can I ask you, you don't have to raise your hands, but think about, for those of you especially new and you haven't heard that here before, right? It's very difficult sometimes. You feel almost a little embarrassed to say it. I'm a pure and perfect. Sounds like ego, right? Paradox. It sounds like ego. I'm a pure and perfect being of light. No, I'm acknowledging that it's the light, not Chaim. It's the light in me that makes me pure and perfect, not me. That's the difference. The ego is, Chaim is the pure and perfect person. No, the light in me is pure and perfect, and I'm working to be the conduit of that perfection. I am working then to express the kindness and all the good light behaviors and get rid of my ego and get rid of my anger, therefore. And that's what we're here this morning. So now, how are we going to change it? Yeah, consciousness is everything. So we start with a biblical, something out of the Proverbs, I believe it is, or Psalms. Every day, B'kol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit. Every day, the Creator is recreating the universe. You wake up in the morning, it's a brand new day, don't we say? Brand new day. The sad part is, what do we usually do? We carry yesterday's consciousness into today, including all the bad stuff. Uh-oh, you know what I got to face today. You know what I'm going to do today. You know what's going to happen today. It's going to be one of those days. Instead of recreating ourselves and the world around us, we allow the same old, same old, same old, same old. But the scriptures are telling us every day we have a chance to change, because the light of God inside of us is waiting to be expressed through us. So all our job is to let it out a little more. But now we have to have the understanding. How are we going to change that? How can we change our anger? And as I shared with Daniel actually this morning, he was asking me questions. And I'm sharing with him. How many of you put gasoline in your car? Right. Gasoline originally gets drawn out of the earth as crude oil. How many of you would put crude oil in your gas tank? Exactly. So crude oil goes through a refining process to become gasoline. And then you put it in your car and you drive. Now, as you're putting the gasoline in your car, where's the crude oil? The crude oil is what gasoline is after it's transformed. So when we're talking about anger management, and we're talking about getting rid of our anger, it's transformation. It's not just setting it aside and we'll try and pretend like we're okay. It's transformation, like crude oil gets transformed to gasoline, so there's no more crude oil. Our anger gets transformed into kindness, love, compassion, generosity, tolerance, etc. And therefore, the anger is dissipating until it's all gone. That's what we do here in the center, transformation. Not just pretending, setting aside, or what have you. Suppression. Transformation. So now, how are we going to get started? Because, like we said, anger is a very powerful emotion. And it's hard to transform it. It's hard to hold it back. So the first thing the Kabbalists teach us is, one, we just have to realize what's the cause and effect. And we've been speaking about it. So the first step to transformation is having desire to change. If we don't have a desire to change, if we don't have motivation to change, then why would we make any effort? So there has to be some reward we feel in our mind. There has to be some benefit for us to change. And those are the things that will give us the strength to get up and change our anger. So the first thing is very simple. Who wants to be disconnected from the light of their soul? Who wants to be considered an idol worshiper, which doesn't just mean that we think something else is the source of our fulfillment, but it also means that whatever fulfillment we get from that material thing is only temporary. That's why when the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. Right? What are we looking for? Another instant gratification, another instant gratification. Give me more, give me more, give me more. Because we got what we wanted, right? We got angry, we scream and we yell. They do what we want, but then we feel bad or it doesn't stick. It's only temporary. Then they do the same thing again. And we find ourselves kicking the chair and all the rest of it. We're getting angry again and again and again. So we don't want temporary fulfillment. We want lasting fulfillment. So that will only happen when we stay connected to the light of our soul. The second thing is, I'm motivated because I want all the blessings. If I don't disconnect myself from the light of my soul, if I don't disconnect myself from all the blessings in life, peace, health, love, prosperity, protection on the street, good relationships, good health, etc., if I don't disconnect from it, then what will I have? Lasting blessings. So my health, my peace, prosperity, all the good things in my life can last for me instead of be short run. Because it's coming from the light of the Creator. So I'm giving up, yes, short-term fulfillment for long-term fulfillment. So now once I start to do that, once I start to put in my mind, yes, if I act like the light, long-term fulfillment. Give in to the ego, short-term fulfillment, long-term chaos. Now I start to have some motivation. Now I have the power. Now I have the enthusiasm. Now I have the motivation. What do? So we have to start where we are. Just like when you're lost. If you're driving somewhere and you get lost, and you pull out the map or you turn on your GPS, where does it start from? Right where you are. So then if we already have aspects of anger, let's start with that. B'kol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit. Every day we can change. Because we know if we are pure and perfect beings of light, and the light of love, kindness, tolerance, generosity, humility, all the good attributes of the Creator are ours already, then where does the negative come from? It's just the good hidden. If you take love, because we're in the physical world, and we have what looks like two sides to everything. So there's the light side of love, and then once love is covered up, it can become hatred. You have the light of generosity. Once it's covered up, it becomes greed. You have the light of humility. Once it's covered up, it becomes ego. So our job is to take away the cover. But we got to start where we are. So how do we start? We start with our human anger. Because when we're angry, what's the first thing we want to do? Somebody makes us angry. In essence, what do we want to do? Push them away. Get them out of our life. Scream, yell, whatever it means, get them away. Do you have to think about it? When you're angry and you kick the chair so your toe hurts and you're screaming at the chair, besides some foolish people like ourselves who'll kick it a second time, right? Smart thing to do. We bump into the chair, hurts our toe, we say, darn chair, kick it again, because we want to get rid of it. Chair says, I don't mind. Right? You understand? So we start. I was thinking about how I just did that recently. Okay. The train went that way for a second. So then we got to start where we are. Start with your anger. So if anger is to push something away, and we have that automatic push it away. So now let's start being like the righteous people. What do we read? God was angry. Read it in the Bible. That's why you can't take the Bible only on its literal level, according to the Zohar, according to the Kabbalists. Because can we imagine the pure and perfect infinite light being angry or jealous or anything like that? No. So it's got to be metaphorical, but it also relates to us today. The prophets of old were angry at the people, but they weren't angry at the people. It's what we call righteous anger. So we start with our anger, and instead of being angry at people, place, or thing, let's start being angry at our ego. Let's start being angry at our negative side, that little bad habit voice that's in our head that tells us to be fearful, to be egotistical, to be resentful, to feel guilt and shame, etc. Let's start using anger to push away darkness. Because the moment we will start to think in those terms, we'll be angry at the negativity, then what's our automatic knee-jerk response? Push it away. Well, how are you going to push away darkness? Only with the light. So the more angry we become at darkness, at the ego inside of us, at our negativity, then the more we will express light in order to change it, to transform it. Like we affirm, love, kindness, and compassion. So the moment I'm angry at greed, intolerance, guilt, shame, resentment, I'm going to be more godlike. And the moment I'm more godlike, yes, I may sound angry, but it's not anger. Any of you a parent? Have you ever had to look at your children and be stern with them? But righteous anger, or ideally parental anger, you're at peace. You love your children so much, but you don't want them to continue the negative behavior. So you may sound angry. You may look like you're being stern, but inside it's just love radiating from you. That's in essence, when it says God was angry, how can God be angry? God is pure love of the ultimate kind, unconditional. So when people did something negative, and it says in the Bible, God was angry, God wasn't angry at the people. How could God be angry at its own perfection? But it was angry at the negativity, meaning it was shining all its light so people could be aware, number one, that they were doing the wrong thing, so that they could get rid of the wrong thing and start doing the light thing, the godlike behavior. So that's where we're going to start transforming, by looking for that righteous anger within. It's interesting, I just read yesterday in the Zohar. It's funny how things become synchronistic, right? The more we're doing this. Reading in the Zohar, it says, anger is fire from the negative side. That's why it's so powerful. Like fire can burn through everything, right? With enough fire, burn through everything. So anger comes as fire from our negative side. But righteous anger means it's fire from the light of our soul. It's fire from the light of God that will remove all the darkness. It'll burn up the fear, the anger, the greed, the guilt, the shame, and the resentment, etc. It'll get rid of all of that. That's what we're here to do. We're here to express, if you want to call it righteous anger, at our own negativity, not at somebody else. Anger at our negativity or anger at the negativity that's caught and hiding inside them, not at them. It's a huge difference. So in order to start transforming, we have to be motivated. In order to be motivated, we have to see the reward. What do I get? I get peace. I get prosperity. I get joy. I get serenity. How valuable is that? That's the motivation. So then I'm constantly focused, consciously. I start to feel angry at the guy in front of me driving on the street. I have to decide, do I want chaos or do I want light? Harmony and order. So I've got to just start wishing him well. Take away his or her blindness, spiritual blindness, let's say, that could cause them an accident. So now I'm using the fire of the light inside me to send them light to open their eyes so they'll drive more consciously and not get in an accident. Or if it's somebody at work or somebody at home, it's all the same idea. I have to send the light to take away darkness. Because once you take away darkness, people will transform forever. As long as there's darkness, it's only temporary. It's only temporary. So today is the day to start awakening. What desire do I have? And it's only up to us. We're the ones who have to decide. Is it worth it for us to transform our anger? Or has anger brought us enough good, or at least apparent good, that we don't want to get rid of it? Like an addiction. If a person feels there's any redeeming qualities to an addiction, they'll never get rid of it. Even if it's only 2%. But if it was good 2% of the time, that's what's going to be in our mind. Well, I don't want to get rid of it because there was some time that it was good. Maybe the anger served us in one way or another up to now, because we didn't see the chaos that it brought later. That was another illusion, because we couldn't see the cause and effect of my anger and what came back. So then when something came back, I said, no, it was something else. So we have to feel anger is no, gone, finished. I don't want any of it. It has no redeeming qualities. The only thing close is, as we've said, righteous anger, the light of the Creator coming out of me in all the ways I can behave. Joy, peace, forgiveness, tolerance, love. Light will remove darkness. Darkness will not remove darkness. If we want to remove all the pain and suffering of the world, which is in our hands and in our capability, we have to then be more righteous in that way. And we're all perfectly righteous beings waiting to live into it. So then today is the day to take the fire of the light of God that's inside of us and find every way, shape, and form possible to shine it on our family and friends. Because I'm sure it's happened to all of us, somewhere along the line where we've been angry with somebody in a house in the reactive way, not in the positive way. And then chaos is created because we regret it the minute we say whatever it is we said. So now is the time to start thinking, the light of my soul, the light of my soul, the light of my soul. Let the righteousness come out. Let the light come out. Target. Look around at all the world. Feel angry today, right now, about all the greed, the intolerance, the hatred, the violence, etc. But remember that it's not the people. It's that negative shell that's surrounding those people that they've encased themselves in. Our job is to free every negative person from that shell of hatred and anger and greed and jealousy and resentment and hurt. And the beauty of the light of the Creator is, as we shine our light to free other people from the bondage of their negativity, we are also breaking through our shells. And as light dispels darkness, so too the light of our soul, the light of sharing love, unconditional love, will remove all the pain and suffering from the world forever. And it won't be managing people anymore. It will be what we all want, what the prophets have been telling us, what every religion on earth teaches. It will be heaven on earth, because it all will start with us today. God bless. 2,